think so.
Yes. I'm being asked for 1 second. Does that mean, Yvette, that you're not in place yet? Maybe that's what that means.
I think so. I saw her run to her room.
All right, stand by. Madam President, we are recording.
Yes.
This meeting is being recorded.
Terrific. We will begin with, oh, I'm sorry. Yvette, we will begin with a roll call. I think we've caught our board secretary away from her post. So if everyone is hold, there you go. Terrific. Would you open with a roll call? Thank you. And Marty, stop smiling.
Good morning. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Water and Power Commissioners. Today is Tuesday, February 22nd. This proceeding is broadcast on Channel 35. The exact broadcast times can be found by contacting Channel 35. General Counsel?
Leave it.
Mr. Bravich, are you on mute? Mr. Bravich.
Good morning. In conformity with California Assembly Bill AB 361 and due to public health concerns and directives issued by Mayor Garcetti and the Los Angeles Public Health Department regarding reducing the spread of COVID-19, this meeting of the Board of Water and Power Commissioners will be conducted with some or all commissioners appearing virtually from remote locations. All public comment will be taken telephonically. Members of the public who wish to offer public comment should call 213-306-3065. Again, that number is 213-306-3065 and use meeting code 248-7007-5247 when prompted. Again, that meeting code is 248-7007-5247. The board secretary will call on you when it is your turn to speak. Please state whether you are speaking on a specific agenda item or just offering general public comment. You will have up to 2 minutes per item and a total of 5 minutes for all items. It is important that when you speak to please turn down the volume on your devices so that we don't get any feedback. And if we encounter any technical difficulties or lose a quorum, we may announce a recess. At this point, I will turn it back over to the board secretary.
Thank you. I will now call roll. President McCLAIN-HILL.
Present.
Vice President Reyes.
Present.
Commissioner BARAD Hopkins.
Present.
Commissioner LEHRER.
Present.
Commissioner NEEMAN Brady.
Present.
5 members present and a quorum. I will now turn it over to Board President McCLAIN-HILL.
I'll just say a few very brief remarks at the top. We have a very full agenda with respect to management reports. Today, I am particularly pleased to see the return to office update as it, along with the JFB reconsolidation update. I know that we have tremendous interest throughout our organization as to our path forward as we emerge from a pandemic and begin to deal with the endemic, which will be with us for quite some time. So those items I know that we will get to today. There may be, we may, depending on quorum and commission attendance, we may push the 2022 Power Strategic Long-Term Resource Plan update to our next board meeting. We'll just monitor as we move forward. I will also have some additional direction to staff in connection with the return to office update, and to council related to the commission's and the department's implementation of the city's vaccine mandate. And then finally, I just want to acknowledge and congratulate our board member, Commissioner Mia Lair. Her work was on full display as a part of that magnificent Super Bowl performance weekend celebration. Everything was all things Super Bowl, as we know, just a week or so ago. And the work that Commissioner Lair did at SoFi Stadium in connection with the landscape architecture and design is absolutely world-class and extraordinary, and a really first-rate example of what sustainable design looks like and how that is incorporated, how the space, the outdoor nature and natural space incorporates with the architecture and design of buildings and places that we visit and that we celebrate in and do sports and performance. So there were a number of articles. The one that I enjoyed most about the Super Bowl was the article in the Los Angeles Times that really focused on and highlighted her work there. And I just want to say again, congratulations. It is an extraordinary achievement, and thank you for your contribution to what is increasingly an amazing outdoor experience in the city, community, LA County in general. So, if there are no other opening comments, I will move on to the remainder of the board meeting. And Board Secretary, do we have general public comment?
Yes, we do. We have two. Allison Weber, please state your name and the agenda item you will be speaking on. Be mindful that you will have 2 minutes for comment.
Weber, and I'm providing. Hello, my name is Allison Weber, and I am providing general public comment. I am here today as an organizer for the Keep Long Valley Green Coalition, which was formed in response to the dewatering of Long and Little Round Valleys in the Eastern Sierra. I am here once again to reiterate our ask for the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power to provide a binding agreement for yearly water supply based on that year's snowpack for Long Valley and Little Round Valley. We commend LADWP's cooperation with ranchers and coalition members these past few years to continue to supply water to these areas. While this is appreciated, it does not provide long-term stability for the people of the Eastern Sierra. We ask that LADWP think proactively in regards to this area, ensuring water will be on this land to mitigate future risks such as wildfire, dust, habitat and species loss, and more. We ask that LADWP think publicly and work with community members for a long-term solution. We are not asking for much. We are asking for a seat at the table and for LADWP to act as the members of our community that they are as a result of water management in Eastern Sierra. We are asking for water to be applied to the area as it has been traditionally, with guarantee for the future. As we face a changing future with drier winters, more intense fire seasons, and ongoing mass extinction, we ask that LADWP consider this area and their concerns for the future. You know that climate change is a threat to your water supply. We ask that you consider how it is a threat to our livelihoods here and put long-lasting protections in place for this area, which serves as an important buffer for so many of these threats. A healthy ecosystem here benefits all. A binding agreement for irrigation in the Long Valley area is needed, and we ask that you do not delay. Thank you.
Okay, the next public caller is area code 818, last 2 digits 17. Please state your name and the item you'll be speaking on. Caller 818, last 2 digits 17, are you there? Caller, one last time, are you there? Hearing nothing, that will now close all public comment.
Thank you, and we will move to the general manager's report. Mr. Adams.
Good morning, Madam President and board members. It's great to see everybody today. I know we have a busy meeting. I want to get through a number of items that I think is important for the board to be aware of, so I'll try to hurry through these. First of all, as a reminder, this is Black History Month, and we've been celebrating this month, since the beginning. Last Thursday, we had a great presentation sponsored by our Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and the National Society of Black Engineers chapter here at DWP as NSBE. It was a lunchtime presentation, and it honored, spotlighted the contributions of African-American employees to DWP, and it's paid a very special tribute to Mr. Willie Gibson, who was a former electrical engineer here, really a pioneer in his day when he was hired here, and he was honored with the NSBE 2022 Legacy Award for the leadership and the technical excellence that he showed during his career. It was really interesting to see and hear of the impact he had on so many of our current employees who actually were young engineers, that he was instrumental in either hiring them or shepherding them in their careers as they move forward. He had a big impact locally. He was the former president of the Los Angeles Council of Black Professional Engineers. And our videographer, Jason Klingz, along with NSBE, did a great video about him, tremendous comments from family members and friends and colleagues at work. We have it posted on our internet page, on our social media channels. I'll make sure that Joe Romalo pushes out a link to all the board members. If you haven't had a chance to see it, you'll want to watch this. It's very moving and a great video. And then our next and final event of the month will be on Thursday, the 24th. It'll be featuring a number of our employees discussing the topic diversity of the LADWP, Black family, and African American diaspora. And so we've had these interesting employee dialogues in the past. We had for different cultural months and recognitions in the past, as well as Women's History Month. So I'm really looking forward to this during Black History Month to hear the conversation. They've been very educational, very eye-opening, and so I hope that you'll be able to tune in, and that's at lunchtime on this Thursday. We also had over 400 employees tune in to hear a great discussion in honor of the Lunar New Year. This was another recorded event that's available on our internet page, and it was interesting hearing from employees of Asian descent providing their perspectives on what the Lunar New Year meant to them. And again, the DEI office as well as Aspire put that together, and we appreciate them co-hosting this event. Excuse me, I'll try to talk through this. Next.
Good morning, JFB. This is a reminder from Security Services Division.
Next week is, next month, pardon me, is Women's History Month. It is, can you hear me? I apologize.
4 people per ride. Please avoid speaking while in the elevators.
Wait 1 second.
Use the stairwells and hallways to allow for social distance. Before you head home, don't forget to wipe down your workspace. Thank you for doing your part to keep you and your coworkers safe. For the latest updates on COVID-19, go to www.ladwpemployeeinfo.com. Thank you and have a great day.
I apologize for that, but it's our regular public service announcement to remind employees to take care of themselves and follow all our COVID protocols. As I was saying, March is Women's History Month, so that's coming up pretty quickly here. If you recall, back in March of 2021, we hosted a very great discussion with female employees talking about how the department can better support them in our workforce, as part of our workforce. Since then, we have formed a Women's Council. Commission President CYNTHIA McCLAIN-HILL and Retirement Board President LaTanya Bogan have been co-chairing this, and we've done a survey along with our Human Resources group to really try to get insights as to things that we can do to benefit the women in our department, particularly in the areas of career development, work-life balance, and workplace conditions. And so we're going to continue that. The Women's Council is ready to take off again, and we're looking toward more discussions during Women's History Month. Also, there are plans in the works for a hike or a walk scheduled for Saturday, March 5th at Hollywood Reservoir. They're just developing those plans now, but we'll post them as soon as we can. And I hope that you'll all be able to join in that hike at our own Hollywood Reservoir, and a chance to spend a few hours getting out with other fellow employees and really have time for some health and wellness and reconnecting with everyone, since we haven't been able to be together very much this last year. Tomorrow, our board president and I, along with members of the power system, are joining the mayor in New Mexico to mark the completion of the Red Cloud Wind Project. Senator Martin Heinrich, the U.S. Senator from New Mexico, as well as a number of other elected officials in New Mexico, will be attending that ceremony. Red Cloud, you may recall, was a project that the board passed the purchase power agreement not that many months ago. It went together pretty quickly. It's located in 3 counties in central New Mexico, and it'll add about 6% of renewables to our portfolio. So this is a huge stride forward for us with the Red Cloud project coming on. It's now the largest and lowest cost wind facility in our power fleet. So we're happy to go to New Mexico tomorrow to celebrate the dedication of that and our partnership with the state of New Mexico, which again is now the 6th state that we receive power to the LA Basin from. Our LA 100 equity strategies is underway with continuing research efforts by NREL and UCLA, helping us get to an equitable energy future that's 100% clean. This coming Saturday, the February 26th, and the following Thursday, March 3rd, we'll be hosting 2 virtual community meetings in English and Spanish to gather feedback from customers and community members. And it's open to everyone to participate in these events. We're hoping to get as much input as we can and a lot of participation, so we can really gain knowledge and interest from the community and understand what's important to them as we work toward a clean energy future. Last week, we participated in the Canadian Water Innovation Roadshow 2022. This was the 3rd time we partnered with the Canadian Consulate in LA, the Consul General Zabe Sheikh, as well as Adel Haj Khalil, the GM of Metropolitan Water District, and I kicked off the event. It introduced Canadian companies that work in innovative areas in the water field to opportunities here in the Los Angeles Basin. We do this with not only Canadians, but sometimes other countries as well, to really bring in more products and ideas into the LA region, where we've actually incorporated a number of new and innovative technologies to help us advance how we deal with water here, water scarcity, water treatment, and water quality monitoring. Lastly, if we can put if Steve Ball can put the photo up on, we have a photograph I'd like to share with the board. This photograph is a photo of Ed Lee. It's one of our employees who's an underground distribution construction mechanic in the power system. The photograph was taken by our photographer, Chris Korsmier, and it was the 1st place winner of the Western Energy 2021 photo contest. We were pleased to be able to highlight Ed doing his job. The Western Energy Institute is a trade association that serves the electric and natural gas industries throughout the United States, in the Western United States and Canada. And it gives us a chance to engage with other utilities where we learn from each other, showcase projects, and in this case, also I'm able to display our skills of our folks at work. So this photo was taken by Chris. He did a great job. His work, as well as some of the work of Art Mazicki, are on the walls outside the board office, showing our employees at work. And this was the 1st place winner, displayed nationally through the Western Energy Institute. So congratulations, Chris. And thanks to Ed for being such a great role model and being perfectly photogenic, I should say. So with that, that is the completion of my report, and I'll answer any questions if you have any. Otherwise, we'd be happy to turn it back to you so we can move on with the bigger reports today.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments on the general manager's report?
I would be interested in getting the location and time of these programs that are up in the next couple of weeks.
Certainly.
I mean, I may not be looking in the right place, but and it may be in the packet, but it would be good to know about that ahead of time and potentially plan to attend.
We'll make sure that all commissioners are invited to the community event or to the community engagement meetings with respect to the equity strategy.
Yeah.
And also, Commissioner Lair, I have asked our board secretary to make sure that all commissioners are invited to the hike that's taking place, which is the first sponsored event by the Women's Council and one of the kickoffs for Women's History Month. So.
Okay. Where is the hike?
It'll be at Hollywood Reservoir.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned. Thank you. And also the Canadian sort of event would have, it would be in general interesting to have a monthly calendar that if some of us are interested to be
We'll
able
work with the board office to make sure that you're getting information in the way that best suits your needs.
Yeah.
I do know that these things go out, but we will make sure that we work with you to get
Thank you so much.
in an organized way.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, then we will move to the ratepayer advocate. Do you have any comments on agendized items at this point?
We may have comments on some of the management reports, and as usual, if there are any questions on the agendized items, we may address them at the time.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Then we will move to the Neighborhood Council impact reports. Is there anything to report, Board Secretary?
No community impact statements or formal positions were filed by any neighborhood councils on the items on today's agenda.
All right, thank you. Then we are down to item H. And with respect to items that are currently on our agenda that may be approved, I will need to be recused from item L3. So let's take up items L1 and L2 for approval unless there are questions that require discussion. Seeing none, is there a motion to approve items L1 and L2?
So move. Motion.
Madam Chairman, I would like to ask the ratepayer advocate if he would, comment on, let's see, L2, please.
Okay, then let's take L2 also as special. And we will instead vote. Is there a motion for L to approve item L3?
Motion to approve.
I will second.
Board President McCLAIN-HILL.
I'm sorry, not L3. I'm sorry, I meant L1. So that was a motion to approve L1, and I will second. Are there any comments on item L1, or are we ready for a vote?
Yes.
Would you take the roll, please?
Board President McCLAIN-HILL.
Aye.
Vice President Reyes.
Aye.
Commissioner BARAD Hopkins.
Aye.
Commissioner LEHRER.
Aye.
Commissioner NEEMAN Brady.
Aye.
5 ayes.
Terrific. Then we will move now to management reports. Starting with presentation number 1, the JFB consolidation update.
So Mike Wooding from our facilities group will lead this discussion. Go ahead, Mike.
Good morning, Madam President, Vice President, and board members. My name is Mike Wooding, and I'm the Director of Facility Services. I'm here to provide an update on the JFB reconsolidation project. Next slide, please. Here's a brief overview of the topics that I will cover in today's update. So we're going to talk about the project progress, the project pivot, opportunities for enhancements, next steps, construction costs, amended schedule, and project outcomes and goals. Next slide, please. Since last October, we've made progress in a number of areas we discussed last fall. Over the next few slides, I'll provide some details on each of these topics. It includes additional scope of work, the status of the pilot hoteling program, office standards, and the codification of architectural themes for building renovations. Next slide, please. So we conducted some investigatory work on the vacated 6th floor to determine the condition of the asbestos fireproofing, mechanical systems, and feasibility of removing and reinstalling the historic ceiling grid system. As this reconsolidation effort will require relocation of walls and other building system upgrades, it was important to understand the complexities of the work above the ceiling. This was the largest known removal of the ceiling system components in the department's history. Results of the investigation concluded that there was significant overspray of asbestos-containing materials, or ACM, on building systems, components, and additional asbestos-containing materials that will require addressing during construction. In addition, it was determined that the ceiling system can be removed and reinstalled, but with considerable effort to catalog and store components for reinstallation. Next slide, please. Here are some photographs of the 6th floor mock-up that was discussed just a moment ago. The mock-up was divided into 2 phases. The first was a larger area where ceiling tiles were replaced with clear plexiglass, so engineers and consultants can observe the systems above. Without the plexiglass, the observation would have required additional training and PPE. The second phase was the removal of the ceiling grid system as shown in the lower left photo. This provided a deeper understanding of the ceiling system construction rather than simply reviewing the circa 1965 drawings. Next slide, please. As JFB was constructed in the mid-1960s, the ceiling grid system is not up to current building codes. It lacks certain structural components to secure it during large seismic events. In order to bring it up to code, the installation of splay wires and a bracing for tall walls in the office areas will be required. There are approximately 1,000 connections per floor, plus ACM removal for the tall wall upgrades that will be required. Based on the amount of connection points and to help ensure the safety of building occupants during earthquakes, the decision has been made for the removal of the ACM and replace it with new fireproofing. Next slide, please. Above are some of the photos of ceiling damage from the Northwoods earthquake. This is not a JFB, but it demonstrates the potential for ceiling failure, particularly in unimproved ceiling systems. The diagram and photo on the left demonstrate the splay wires we described a little bit earlier. Next slide, please. In addition to point of connection issues, the removal of the ACM allows for a closer inspection of the structural connections that have been subject to stress from past earthquakes. In addition to the ceiling abatement, all the remaining asbestos floor tile and mastic will be removed as well. Once the asbestos has been removed from these 2 areas, it will allow maintenance crews to access the ceiling and replace floor tiles without major disruptions to building occupants. Next slide, please. On a more employee-focused note, progress has been made in the area of the hybrid hoteling program being implemented based on the relocation strategy of JFB occupants. In conjunction with Human Resources and Labor Relations, a pilot program is currently working through the development process. A draft hybrid hoteling policy has been developed, and a presentation to labor is ready for presentation and refinement. The construction of the pilot hoteling workspace is nearly complete, with discussions underway with IT to identify the technology requirements. Once labor is engaged, an outreach will be performed for voluntary effort to participate, and data will be collected for program enhancement and expansion. The initial pilot, we're shooting for about 25 employees. Next slide, please. Once the scope of the ceiling work was discovered, it became apparent that other areas of the building needed to be upgraded based on code or application of sound building management principles. In 2020, the department engaged with REYES, an engineering and consulting firm, to provide a comprehensive modernization review of the building. When the reconsolidation project crossed over into the mechanical and structural recommendations outlined in the REYES report, the report provided a set of data to help guide the project in an a la carte fashion. These are broken up into immediate actions, quick wins, and provide architectural and sustainability enhancements. Cost bases and were also included in the assessment. Next slide, please. So based on a clear understanding of the scope and requirements, the project needed a pivot to stay on track. Next slide, please. With all this new additional information, it was determined that our internal resources for design and construction were not sufficiently equipped to execute the project. After some investigation by Facility Services Planning and Design Group, a new avenue to execute the project can be utilized using the City of LA Bureau of Engineering contracts for architectural, engineering, and construction work. This would include services for quality assurance inspections as well. LADWP would continue to provide general oversight on the project in terms of scope and budget. This allows the project design and construction to be refocused to a team with that are experienced in commercial projects such as this. It also gives our employees some exposure to their processes for knowledge transfer purposes. Next slide, please. After engagement with BOE, the change from a phased approach to complete building vacancy changes how the employees will be moved and their working conditions and the space requirements and how space requirements are managed. This will include an acceleration and development of the hybrid hoteling program. By using data from the pilot hoteling program in coordination with labor, new spacing requirements can be determined and leasing options can be explored and executed. Vacating the building also presents an opportunity to start to shift from paper-based storage of documents to digitizing and electronically storing files, reducing the boxing, moving, storage, moving, and unpacking methods traditionally used in vacating and restacking a facility. Next slide, please. As previously discussed, there are a number of new required tasks to execute the reconsolidation project. Some of these optional enhancements identified in the AREP assessment that could be executed taking advantage of the vacant building and the utilization of the BOE design and construction resources. Upgrades and enhancements are briefly outlined with base cost estimates on the next slide. Next slide, please. These items are considered the base costs of the reconsolidation project, totaling about $200 million. Of these, most of these are driven by code required upgrades in conjunction with the office renovation work. So this will include the actual office renovation, restroom renovations, bringing the current standards up to handicap standards, LED retrofit, the aforementioned asbestos abatement, ceiling system upgrades, VAV, which is part of the air conditioning system that controls the airflow through the ceiling system, required fire dampener replacements, and upgrades to the fire protection system and fire life systems for the building. So these are considered the base costs at $200 million. Next slide, please. Now, some of the additional alternatives that were outlined in the AREP report are described here. In particular, there's some end-of-life equipment and HVAC and electrical upgrades defined as requiring immediate attention in the AREP assessment. The last four add-ons have been discussed as being desired on modernizing the building, but are considered optional to one degree or another. We can move forward with certainty on the required upgrades, and we'll need to discuss and decide which alternatives we can on-ramp moving forward. This can be done by asking the design team through BOE to provide these items as add-ons in the final construction package. So some of the things that we're considering are structural brace framing, end of HVAC HVAC replacement, end of life electrical equipment, an auditorium renovation, kitchen and cafeteria remodel, conference center remodeling, and other sustainability upgrades. Next slide, please. So in regards to schedule, here are the current dates for the project. These may shift based on some of the decisions to include some of the add-ons and a variety of other factors, including supply chain and construction resource availability. So right now we're looking at engaging Bureau of Engineering relatively quickly in April of 2022. Once that process is set and we've had an opportunity to review some of the architect proposals, we can give the architect a notice to proceed in 2020. The JFB relocation effort will be concurrent along with design and this process. Construction notice to proceed, we're looking at February of 2025. And like I said, depending on how many add-ons, project completion, we're estimating about February of 2028. Next slide, please. So project outcomes, what are the goals here? Management and the board are joined together in understanding the historical significance of JFB, along with setting an example of what modern sustainable buildings should be. And with these outcomes driving the project goals, we'll continue to move forward with these in mind. Looking at a refurbished building with modern efficiencies and safety features, modeling state-of-the-art building systems, an open floor space plan suitable for a hybrid hoteling, a workplace attractive to high-quality employees, reducing operating and maintenance costs, increase building longevity, and last but not least, but this is the building will serve as a model for the EBWB community, for the community. Next slide, please. That concludes my presentation. I'm looking forward to any questions that you guys might have.
Yes. Would you explain your use of the term hoteling?
Okay, so hoteling is in conjunction with a hybrid work schedule. So a hybrid work schedule is when the employee works part-time at home and part-time in the office. So hoteling is when an employee will actually reserve a space, a workspace in the building, not dissimilar for like when you would reserve a hotel room in a hotel. So that can be done a number of ways, depending on how many employees are doing it. There are software applications where an employee can reserve a workspace, or it can be on a smaller scale. It can be done just working through the supervisor. So the workspace would be generic. There would be a computer monitor. There would be a computer there, a keyboard, telephone, and they would come in and use that workspace for the day. At the end of the day, then that workspace would be sanitized and be ready for the next employee for the following day. Does that help you?
Well, do they sleep there?
No, they would commute as they normally would. So they would drive in for the day, occupy the space, secure their files, whether they either bring them with them or they would lock any secure files in a file cabinet. And then they would return home that day.
Okay, thank you.
I was going to say, Commissioner Hopkins, they simply come up with all of these cute terms.
Yes.
To describe things that have been trending in the industry for a long time. So it's really just, describing how you have multiple employees share a common workspace, so you don't have a dedicated desk. And now they call it hoteling, as opposed to the way that we would have thought about it 10 years ago when you first, or 20 years ago even, when you start introducing the concept of people sharing a workspace, so not everybody being there all at the same time.
I had the same thought when the first time I heard it too. So it doesn't really quite make sense, but after doing a little bit of research, we got to figure it out. So that's a great question. Thank you.
Nicole?
It has something to do with looking at the entire concept of the future of work, because we're not going back to the normal work concept that we normally have, and so that hoteling, I would say, like a booking system, right? You book your reservation system for your space. Yeah, and we're I'm working with Mr. Northrup, and we've had some initial conversations that he used software applications in his previous jobs that involve this. So we're nibbling away at the edges of moving forward with this.
Are there any other questions or comments?
I have some questions.
Absolutely.
You have a staff within DWP. Are they, architects, right? Are they going to be involved, or this is all outsourced to BOE?
Well, it'll be kind of a hybrid approach. So I think general oversight will be through Sammy Wong's group. So they're going to provide, we need to provide BOE an accurate scope of work. We'll give them the budgetary guidelines to work through the process and just general oversight. But I would say the bulk of the architectural work, the nuts and bolts part of it, would be done through our resources at Bureau of Engineering.
Okay. And so I guess so BOE is doing the oversight of what?
Yeah, let me clarify. So Bureau of Engineering would be basically, we would be using their on-call contractors to do some of the architectural work. So they would be providing some oversight. We would work as a team alongside with them to make sure that that we stay in the boundaries of the project scope. So there would be contracted architectural firms that would be performing the work. BOE would be there to oversee the contract in some respects, along with side by side with Sammy's team. And BOE also provides quality assurance staff. So they have trained inspectors that would, when construction begins, to observe and make sure that the project is held to its contracted standards.
Just in terms of the time frame of this project, just because everybody's been understaffed, it's just something to consider. But also, if you're doing subcontracting, I would imagine that we're deploying local business hire and also minority MBE, WEB, SBE hire as part of that process. Okay.
Understood.
In fact, Commissioner Lair, as this presentation was moving forward, I was thinking, given the scale of the scale of the presentation or the project, the decisions, there's certainly a number of issues that we'll be tackling moving forward. That putting together a board ad hoc committee to work more closely with the department would be a useful way to proceed. And I was going to ask if you had an interest in serving on that ad hoc committee where we could delve more deeply into the details in terms of execution. So hopefully that's something that you will consider, and we'll be able to work with the department, with Mike's group, moving forward. I think Mike appreciate very much the vision and the update as it relates to where things stand. We'll be looking forward to an additional update around mid-year as we continue to keep the employees informed all along the way, since this has significant impact on their working conditions over the next few years. Also look forward to discussing in the next iteration. I know that we've talked very much about project goals and objectives. Marty mentioned in his remarks the Women's Council and surveys that have been done in connection with beginning to stand up a Women's Council, and a number of items around conditions of employment that came up in that survey are relevant to the work that you'll be doing with respect to JFB, things like lactate rooms and rooms for lactation, bathrooms, break rooms, things of that nature. And as we have worked with your group and looked at various iterations, we've not really focused on those sorts of employee amenities that are specifically of interest and concern to the women employees at the department. In addition, wellness was an item that came up over and over, and work-life balance. So we will be, I think, very interested, again, when we get to the particulars, at looking at the project in terms of how, at the end of the day, it serves multiple interests, including care to ensure that we have incorporated specific elements that are supportive of and important for the many, many women who work at JFB. So I just wanted to kind of put a stake in the ground around that as we move toward Women's History Month. And I'm sure there'll be much more discussion about that in the weeks and months to come. So if there are no other questions or comments on this item, I didn't,
I just have
oh, I'm
one
sorry.
more.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Just a reminder about the building being LEED certified. So if we can increase that certification to a platinum level, looking at sustainable materials and what constitutes how we can be certified at that highest level, I would appreciate it if you can take a look at that.
Yeah, there was quite a bit of information provided in the ARUP report for that, so we have a good plan moving forward where we can choose from, like a la carte, how we can move forward and obtain that. So
That's terrific. Thank
all
you.
right.
Excellent. Well, again, an excellent update and look forward to seeing things progress on the timeline that you've outlined today. So thank you for that. And if we could now move to item number 2, the return to office update.
Okay, Thomas Simonowski will lead this off, and then I will chime in for the last couple slides.
Thank you, Marty. Thomas Simonowski, Employee Health Plans and Services. Good morning, Madam President, Madam Vice President, and Commissioners. So today's report is to provide an update on return to office. Next slide, please. So for the agenda here, we're going to go over some measures that have been put in place throughout the course of the pandemic that were designed to mitigate risk of COVID. We're going to talk about the current status and statistics, and we were able to get updated information from our division and administrative managers. We're also going to take a look at what other organizations have been doing, and we're going to share some lessons learned from hybrid remote working. And then the last 2 items here, the return to office plan and the future of work, I'm going to hand it back off to Marty so that he can go over these 2 items. Next slide, please. So throughout the course of the pandemic, there have been 3 key features that the department has focused on to try to mitigate the risk of COVID-19. We've had safety, communications, and health. And the board has previously been briefed on these items. However, we just wanted to bring this back up as background information when we start talking about return to office. So the safety items that you see here continue to be an integral part of making sure that our employees are able to do their work safely and able to ensure that COVID is not being transmitted and to reduce that risk from happening. So we have items like encouraging, hygiene, staying at home if symptoms develop, physical distancing, disinfection, and so forth. There's been constant communications with employees, and throughout the course of the pandemic, there's been a dedicated website for COVID, text messaging to the employees to keep them as up to date as possible. Numerous bulletins and announcements regarding COVID have been issued, even on a weekly basis, sometimes, bi-weekly as well. Video updates, and the resource office was also established as well to help with communications, but also under safety. And then in terms of health, we've also had primary benefits through our employee assistance program and through our health insurance. And these are benefits that are accessible to all of our employees 24/7. They help out with wellness, and they provide vital resources for our employees, including the ability to get testing at no cost and also to get vaccinated. Next slide, please. So when we talk about return to office, it's a key component that DWP has a hybrid remote working framework. And as Mike mentioned in his previous presentation, a hybrid remote working framework is basically working both at home and also from the office. So DWP has had that model for almost 2 years now. And in most situations, the policy has been for the employee to work at least 1 day a week or 2 days a week if they're a second level supervisor. And it's important to note that very recently, with the uptick that occurred in January, that policy of 1 day a week or 2 days a week was relaxed. And it was really done to ensure, that as many employees that are able to work remotely and can, do their jobs from home, were able to, work from home to the greatest extent possible. And that occurred in January. And at this time, employees have been notified that it will remain until February 28th, so until next week. Now, in terms of statistics, we have about 61% of our workforce that does not work remotely, and about 38% of our workforce that does work remotely through this hybrid remote schedule. Next slide, please. So this shows the distribution of field and office employees by our system and organizations. And so Power System obviously has the most field employees. And we thought it was important to also break out the customer services division because their remote working is slightly different from the rest of the department. They've had a little bit more flexibility, and what is meant by that is that they've had more employees that are able to work more closer to 100% from home. But if you see here, the rest of joint has a higher percentage of office employees, and then the water system is roughly 59% field and 41% office. Next slide, please. So this slide is just designed to show how the office employees, what percentage are working remotely, and roughly, 86% of our office employees are in a hybrid remote office schedule at this time. Next slide, please. So we wanted to provide some information on locations, and we thought it was best to show the largest locations, to show the distribution between office and field personnel. And what's noted here is that, obviously the John Ferrara building has the highest concentration of office employees, followed by Figueroa Plaza. And so this is important because it definitely explains why, there's a somewhat of a focus on JFB at times. In fact, earlier today, we heard the announcement during the course of this board meeting, which highlights, how we have so many, individuals here at JFB. But you can see in other locations, there's a lot less office employees. There's a lot more field employees, and just by the very nature of the work that's being performed, in most situations, field employees are just not able to, really be able to do their job duties, working from home. Next slide, please. So we asked divisions if they were able to survey their operational needs for hybrid remote working, and we wanted to find out if there was an optimal number by position. And so this slide here is really an initial survey that was conducted very recently, and it was an attempt to see if there's a way to codify how many days an employee is able to work on site. And so what we found, and preliminarily, is about 14% of the individuals that are on a remote working schedule, they would be able to operationally work on site, 0 days on site. So they would be telecommuting 100%, and 52% would be able to maximize operations by working 1 day per week. So then the other days they would be working remotely. And so essentially what we found is roughly 2/3 of employees would be able to, take care of operations and work from home. And this is our initial assessment. More information will be needed if the decision is made to expand on the current remote working program. Next slide, please. And so we also were able to reach out to different organizations, and what we found is we asked them, what are they doing in terms of return to office planning? And some of the consistencies that we found is other organizations are doing a hybrid model. Obviously, DWP is a part of the city of Los Angeles, and LA City is also doing a hybrid. But other utilities are doing hybrid models like PG&E, Edison, SoCal Gas, and San Diego Gas and Electric. In terms of a reentry date, we didn't really find organizations that had a hard date. Some organizations, they were planning on returning back in January, but obviously with the uptick in positivity cases, that got sidelined, and we're not aware of any of these organizations with a firm date. Although with SoCal Gas, it's possible sometime in the spring. And then depending on the organization, some have testing requirements that they're contemplating and others are not contemplating. Most notably, the city of Los Angeles has its vaccine and testing requirement ordinance. Next slide, please. We also wanted to share some lessons learned. Since we've been in this pandemic, it's been approximately 2 years where we've had remote working. And, there are some lessons learned that we can, take a look at and apply. Obviously, in terms of operational efficiencies, we have been able to experience reductions in paper. So we've become a little bit more electronic, a little bit more digital, and COVID somewhat forced us to do that. For example, we recently came out with the electronic signature policy department-wide. We've expanded the use of email to all employees, whereas in the past, pre-COVID, we had thousands of employees that did not have email. Pay stubs are now disseminated electronically, and so an overall reduction in paper has been realized. There's been other positives with that have happened during COVID. We've had a decrease in workers' compensation claims compared from 2020 to 2021. Reduced parking, less traffic and congestion. However, even though we've had some positives, there have been some challenges as well. And some of the challenges have been with onboarding new hires, moving from in-person to virtual, providing the access, for in-office resources and support that has been a challenge at times. Not having that in-person, face-to-face communications has also been a challenge at times. And so it really leads to some areas of improvement where we believe possibly that technology increasing the ability to conduct more virtual type meetings and trainings, learning how we can do that in a digital environment is also going to require additional technology with communications, so that way we can collaborate and continue to be creative in order to get the job done. And so we're going to go to the next slide. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Marty.
Okay, thank you. So, looking at our return to office plan, we used to call it a return to work plan, but the reality is that everyone's been working this entire time, and our field crews have been out in the field 100% of the time this entire time. So we didn't want to have anyone who looked at this have the impression that anything otherwise has been going on. So this is a return to office. As Thomas mentioned, next Monday we'll go back to our current telecommute policy, and that telecommute policy was for employees to come in 1 to 2 days per week for regular employees, and then 2 days or more for supervisors and managers as needed. We're looking now at how we would formalize this kind of an interim hybrid model. It'll make it a little more official and a little more predictable for employees, so they are not have anxiety about wondering what's going to happen or when it's going to happen or what it's like to be in the office place. I will apologize. There were supposed to be 2 bullets in that first bullet, but I will note that it got a lot of people's attention right away. So we're talking about the interim hybrid model. The next bullet was supposed to say test requirement, vaccine or test requirements to enter the building. This is something the board's aware. There is an unfair labor practice filed based on compliance with the city vaccine mandate which still needs to be reconciled. The hearing is coming up in middle of March. But looking at what the outcome of that will be and how we will deal with that in terms of vaccines or testing. As Mike Wooding will attest, we've talked about potentially testing all employees weekly, doing rapid tests. There's a number of logistical issues, but certainly, first and foremost, the safety of our employees is paramount to us, and we want to continue the great track record we've had up to this point. Right now, as a target date, and it is just a target, so I could put a marker out there for employees to look toward, I'm hoping that we will have a more formalized hybrid model on May 1st. That gives us more than 2 months from now to prepare. I have a couple of bullets down I thought involved with the unions and planning. We've been working very closely with MEA, Local 18, the other smaller unions in planning for the workforce and making sure to not only communicate what we're planning, but also to make sure that our plans are sound. And we will continue to do that as we work toward this return to office plan. As always, we rely on public health guidelines. For us, most paramount, that's LA County guidelines that are being put out. Of course, the state has guidelines. LA County is typically more conservative. There are also frequently OSHA guidelines that we have to follow. And those guidelines will help us know when it's appropriate to move forward. I'm hoping that we'll see some triggers such as reduced need to mask indoors. We have held for a long time that employees having to wear a mask all day long sitting at their desk is not good really to ask of anyone if it can be avoided. And so I think mask mandate as it comes down and changes will be a key trigger in this, not to accelerate this move, but certainly as something that I would want to see some movement on before we bring employees back any more often. Thomas showed the slide of how many days people would come into work. It's interesting that about 3/4 of folks could be here 1 to 2 days, and based on our assessment, that was position by position with each division. That's what they believe is needed. It is true we have some service desks and other employee resources that are difficult to staff now. We'll have to look at having people here more often. This is also something we'll work very closely with the union on as we develop a plan that's a little more formalized. Right now, it's been cookie cutter, 1 to 2 days per week. We're going to make this a little more specific to make sure that all of our needs are done the best way we can, including our internal support roles to support each other so that things run a little more smoothly. Again, safety protocols will remain in place. Workplace safety, spacing, we did a lot of work on that, including floor plans for when employees would be at their workstations to make sure people aren't too close together. We've done a lot of work on plexiglass. You saw photos of that over the last year and a half or so. Those will remain up. Ventilation has always been a concern in this building in JFB. It's not an issue. Some of our outlying yards, we always looking to make sure that ventilation and filtration of the air is up to standard. And then, of course, masking. There'll never be a time that people are not allowed to wear a mask. Masking, I think for a lot of us, when we go anywhere in a crowd, we go to the grocery store, somewhere we don't know people around us, might be inclined to wear a mask, or just to generally feel better about ourselves, or protecting our families as well. So masking is certainly always available and always welcome, but we're looking to see when it's required and when it may not be in the future. So again, we'll continue to follow guidelines and also be able to remain flexible. We've been very successful at being flexible when there's been a surge, both last holiday season and the prior year, where we reduced staff coming in. But I think based on the numbers we see, a return to office plan does not look a whole lot different than our current telecommute plan, but it'll be a little more regimented, a little more customized, really kind of looking at the areas where we need a little more time in the office or certain days of the week in the office to process, certain, I'd say paperwork, or hopefully not paperwork, but, the items that we have to do to support each other and keep the business functioning. So this is something that we'll spend the next 2 months evolving. I'll make sure that we are in communication with employees so that there's no surprises coming forward.
Marty, I just have a question about if you're also addressing employee parking, carpooling, van pooling, is there going to be a cafeteria service as well as more people are coming into? I mean, those are things I think that we need to add to to your list of, being ready, preparing facilities to welcome back the employees that are going to return to work, whether it's a couple of days or 3 days a week.
Thank you very much for bringing that up. That's a very good point. We did look at carpooling and van pooling previously when we had people return more often. That we need to put that back on our list of things to do. We have been able to take advantage of more parking available in the building, and so I hope to be able to continue to have employees park here rather than have to park across the street. But reinstituting van pooling is an important one, and that's also a place that we had some outbreaks where people did not mask, and so we have to look very carefully at that policy. Cafeteria, I know we've had questions from vendors as to when we'll be able to reopen. And so we will need to provide some sort of food service because, as you're aware, there's not much in the walking distance from here around the building. I'm just happy when there's a food truck back out in front of the building right now. Credit union reopened in the building a few months ago, and so the services that employees need during the day, we'll make sure those are there. And thank you very much for bringing those points up. But again, what we want to do is really kind of tweak the plan we have right now with telecommuting based on the assessments from each division as to what they need for people to be here to really optimize what we can do for the foreseeable future while we work on the next part, and that's the future work plan. So if you want to change the slide to the future work plan. So the future work plan is really the longer term look. And this is something that President McCLAIN-HILL brought up, and Vice President Reyes. I know this has been something you brought up, many times in the past. And we envision COVID has changed the way people work forever, and so we are coming to grips with that and what that will mean for us. We are reconstituting our future work task force. We had started this previously. I think in reality, we had too many people who had been around as long as I had, who don't see the future work as clearly as the next generation of workers coming in. So we are looking to reconstitute our task force. Vice President Reyes, I hope that you're going to be able to be on that because you have a lot of interest and vision in this area, and we are looking forward to working with you on that. We do need to do cross-generational task force. So that we have folks that are the incoming workforce as to the kind of things they would want to see and expect, because we want to be an employer of choice. We want to be somewhere that people want to work, that people see us as an innovative employer, and we want to make sure that we're always able to attract the best candidates. And so that is something very important for us. We did a draft remote working policy this last year following the city's remote working policy draft. We're beginning to look at that again, looking at what positions and frequency for remote work, and also, creating along with our labor partners, a kind of a consensus on productivity and accountability to how we can do the things that other companies that do remote work do to make, to be able to show really to the public and the ratepayers that they're getting their value out of all the employees, while at the same time employees are be able to be productive away from the workspace and also save on important things like commute time and time away from home. Obviously, work-life balance is a big thing for all employees, particularly our women employees who typically have to get home to manage family. And so this is something that we're very keen on, to be an employer that somebody wants to work for in the future. Mike mentioned the hoteling pilot. I agree. It's the office sharing is what it in the good old days would be. This has huge impacts on what we need to do in this building. We had new layouts for this building designed and ready to move forward prior to when they were able to take apart that 6th floor ceiling and see what they were really dealing with in terms of having to work on the internal structure of this building. I'm glad in many ways we didn't execute that plan, because in a hybrid workforce, I don't think that every single employee needs to have their own office all the time if it sits vacant most of the day. So I think this has the intertwining of the physical workspace with the restacking, as we call it, of the building is a very important thing. I think it also, even though it had a high price tag on the restacking of this building, also recognizing that that doing this properly with sharing of workspaces would mean we don't have to build other buildings or acquire other buildings elsewhere in the city to handle the workforce, because we are continuing to grow through the pandemic and have continued plans to grow in the future. We want to make sure that that we have the office space for all of our employees. And if we can do it all in this building and not have to build another building, we'll save a lot of money doing that. IT innovations are a key piece of this. How to better manage our workforce that's working remotely, how to transmit work, access work remotely from any place is something that we've done, but we want to do a better job and make sure we're taking advantage of the latest and greatest technologies. And then we think that the future work and the opportunity for remote working is a recruiting tool. And we think that it'll be something that'll make us more attractive to employees. And certainly employees of the future have a different expectation than employees who hired when I hired. And so this is a big piece moving forward. And lastly, so the board is certain is that this is the remote work, return to work, is all part of the COVID emergency and the pandemic emergency. Future work is a whole new model going forward, very closely related, but it is something that'll be negotiated in MOUs. We do not actually have this kind of remote work in our current bargaining unit agreements. And so this is something that we'll do very closely with our unions to make sure that we're all moving forward together. I've spoken to Local 18, and they're anxious to sit down and talk about this, knowing that we'll need to include this and what it means in our upcoming contract negotiations. And so this is something that will be done hand in hand so that we all have a clear picture moving forward of what's expected and how to move forward in the best way for the department and the public we serve, as well as serving our employees and their needs. So that's the completion of what I have, and I'll be happy to take any questions. I can defer to Thomas.
I have a couple questions. There are, sort of think tanks and organizations who have really developed very deep experience and knowledge, both in terms of their internal workforce, but in terms of the future workplace. And I'm just wondering if there's a possibility of doing to have some consulting work done around the issue of whether, the time frame of, the number of people that are going to be working on site, if that's economically, if it makes sense to be thinking that everybody will fit there, or how to manage that, the expectations. And I'm not minimizing, the experience of the team, but I've just happened to have been through a series of presentations, and, from some of the big tech companies, and how they're doing their workplace, and allowing for contraction and expansion at the same time. So the other is I kind of, as a working woman, I think that assuming that the way, I know you didn't mean it exactly that way, Marty.
I knew it came out wrong.
There are a lot of husbands that take on a lot of responsibility and a lot of sharing that goes around. So I just want to
thank you.
Pick that up, since I'm married to one of them.
Yeah, I would be another myself. Thank you. I didn't mean that the way it came out, but thank you for pointing that out. On your first comment, I totally agree. This and we don't feel less than to believe that we need help on doing this correctly. We have Aon on board who helped us with our remote work policy and getting a draft going. We've also looked at what Accenture's done. They're focusing on human capital, digital and physical, being flexible, understanding that not one size fits all, and you need a decision-making mechanism based on the type of work for when to bring people in. and also just the challenges about integrating people into the culture and collaboration and the teamwork aspect when they're not together. So we definitely will plan to bring a consulting firm on board to help in this area. There's some good models out there, and there's some expertise being developed. So you were right on target. We will definitely bring in some help. We did not plan to do this in a vacuum or do it by ourselves. I think get a much better result by working with someone who's an expert in this field.
And part of what I'm actually thinking is, it's one thing is to use the existing mechanical systems and really try to do state of the art with what exists. But, you know, with new technology, there's other opportunities. I will send it around the new Google offices up in the Bay Area, just so you see how it breaks down and how, you know, integrated solar and other, you know, technologies are to the building, so that, you know, anyway.
Yeah, one of the
very fun topic with lots of very creative thinking going on at the moment, and we look forward to the department really, you know, continuing into thinking about these from the perspective of innovation, as we you know, move to an exciting new chapter of how work is done across the country. So I think there's a lot to explore here, and that a lot of that work will be happening in the context of the subcommittee. And Commissioner LEHRER, I'm quite certain that if you'd like to join Commissioner Reyes in that context, she'd be happy to have you.
Thank you.
Be great. And if I could, with what President McCLAIN-HILL said, I'm looking to not have big changes in how we're moving forward between the building restack coming theoretically out of the pandemic, the change to a permanency of a different kind of work than what we've known in the past. I'm looking to stabilize for the workforce so people can know what to expect. We'll be in a little more normal next week, and then within a couple months, I think we'll be in something that's sustainable with just a few tweaks, and ideally then parlay that into the future work, and then again in conjunction with the building restack, so that we don't have employees being whipsawed back and forth in terms of where they're working or what to expect. We want to create a constant expectation and communicate as much as possible. We'd like to keep this effort going, all pointed toward that future, though.
Any other questions or comments on this item?
Yeah, I have a comment. I wondered, Marty and Thomas, if people who are working at home now, if they really like it so much that they don't want to come back to an office environment. And, you know, what we're doing to make it more accessible for them, you know, to work from home. My two sons work from home, and one of them, it's interesting. On Friday, they call it, you know, the casual day. On Fridays, they actually clock out at 2:00, and they don't come into the office. They stay at home, because that's supposed to be the way they relax, and they have casual Friday. And my son thinks that's a great idea, because it enables him, you know, to do a lot of things that he wouldn't do. You know, so I'm just wondering what your experience is with people who don't want to come back.
Well, I will say that, you know, certainly working from home has a number of advantages. The biggest is you don't have an hour drive to get home after work and after a long day. And so I think in terms of balance, you know, work-life balance, it offers a tremendous advantage. One of the challenges for people who work from home is that you hear a lot of stories that people have trouble stop working. You know, they'll work into the evening, and you know, they just get up and they start working, and there are people like that. And so Putting boundaries and expectations is a critical thing. This is something we'll have to develop. One of the, a lot of folks could probably get, most all their job done working remotely. And then there'll be some jobs that have to be done in person and some that have to be done more frequently in person. One of the challenges that I want to make sure we don't lose is, we've embarked on a big culture effort for the department. And really, we always talk about this being a fairly close company, a lot of camaraderie. People have a lot of history together. We thrive on people who make their careers out of this work. And so one of the challenges I think going forward will be when we hire a person, we don't want to hire just an employee. We want to hire an employee who's part of the team and who feels like part of the company, and making sure that people in the future feel like part of this company and want to continue to work here for years, not as a transitional person, but someone who wants to make a career out of it. I think that's an important component that we have to look forward and address as we move forward, because one of the strengths of the department is the longevity of its employees and the memory of how we do business and how we get things done, and what it takes to operate the water and power systems and to keep that going through the generations. So these are the challenges. It's a challenge to manage that work-life balance, the expectations of the new generation of workers coming into the workforce, while at the same time having a close tie and affinity for their coworkers and for this place of business. And so those are the things that we'll really have to work through as we manage this going forward.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions or comments?
I just want to express my appreciation to Marty and the team. Finally, we have a clear path. Thank you so much. We're not gonna nag you anymore. Personally, that's my commitment. No more nagging. I'm gonna be working closely with the team on, conceptualizing more of the details of the plan. And you're on point, Marty, in mentioning about the culture, because everything will hinge upon how we are going to support, these changes, and blending that into a culture that is supportive of the environment and the employees and their needs. So for me, that's like an overarching value that I would like to use, looking at it from the lens of as an employer that whose main interest is really either the health of the employees and the productivity of the employees, because as a municipal utility we have lots of work to do, and it just behooves us to ensure that we are creating that inclusive environment, welcoming environment, and looking at the future. And as for the return to office, as you call it, I think it's a good plan. There's still very few details that we still need to iron out. But again, much appreciation from me personally, and I'm sure the other board members are expressing the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to echo what the previous commissioners have said with respect to both this presentation and the prior presentation, and really applaud the way in which the team has, kind of melded together all of these significant things that are occurring at one time. As I said at the top of the meeting, we are literally transitioning, as is everyone at various paces, from viewing or managing through this once in a hopefully lifetime pandemic into a model of managing an endemic. And what I appreciate most about the return to office presentation is really the prism that set it up. Many of the policies that we adopted at the beginning of the pandemic, not many, all, were driven by the desire and the imperative to keep our workforce safe. Quite a lot of it over time has focused on those work environments where we have the most employees who work indoors, and therefore we're subject to the most risk. As we are moving forward to the next phase of our coping with our new reality and coming out of this surge, it is, I think, critical for us to be really conscious of all of the mitigation strategies in place, including, Marty, you made reference early in your presentation to the city's vaccine ordinance, which is being implemented citywide and subject to our pending negotiations with labor and obviously the disposition of the current unfair certainly will be implemented at this department as well. But in the as we think about, or as we look toward the return to office, I think it's important to note that as of today, we have 8,549 employees that are fully vaccinated, and 173 that are partially vaccinated. We have 1,600 employees that are not yet vaccinated, and I know that we're continuing our efforts with our other stakeholders to present the opportunity to and to encourage employees for their own safety and the safety of others to consider to become vaccinated as soon as possible. In terms of the not vaccinated, or in addition to that not vaccinated population, we have another 897 employees whose status we've not yet been informed of. As we move forward implementing the city's vaccination, Marty, I'd like for you to come back to this board in 30 days with a plan that outlines what that will look like, such that when we do meet that target date to have a stable hybrid plan, we also have in place the mechanisms and have been able to establish, again, subject to the pending unfair and labor negotiations, compliance with the city's vaccine mandate. I also noted that, and as was noted in the presentation, the city has put in place testing requirements, and I would expect that those same requirements will be in place at the department. You just want to say on a personal note that, like everyone, there's a wide range of anxiety associated with, getting back engaged in our normal activities and activities that increase our interaction with other people. For some, it's, I'm all good, let's just go, I'm tired, I don't care. For others, it's, there's still a great deal of skepticism. We want to ensure that the workplace at DWP is one that mitigates not just exposure, but also, and risk, but also mitigates the legitimate anxiety that people feel as they go back into public spaces. We're all anxious to do that. I, in particular, am very anxious to see as many of our employees as possible. I'm looking forward to the hike and other events that are coming up, many of which can be done outdoors, but quite a few of which will have a more hybrid indoor-outdoor setting. And we make that possible by both adhering to the public health guidance around vaccinations, by testing as protocol would dictate, and by implementing additional mitigation measures as conditions would mandate. In addition to the report back on the implementation of the path toward compliance and implementation with the city's mandate in advance of the return to office, which would be May. I'd also like to see a resolution for presentation to this board for adoption that would extend these vaccination requirements to contractors. Certainly, we will not be imposing conditions or on our workforce that we are not imposing on contractors with whom our workforce would be interacting or engaging with. So if that could come back in 30 days as well, I would appreciate that. So are there any questions, or is there anything else that needs to be discussed with respect to these two items? Looks like not. So thank you very much. And we are ready to move forward to the next item. And that would be the item relative to consumer assistance and relief on debt.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for providing time for the status update. Starting with the next slide, please. So starting with the bill relief, we completed the implementation of the state relief credits on January 15th, which provided $275 million in water and power credits for nearly 250,000 customers. So this led to a 55% reduction in arrears. So as of the end of January, water and power arrears are averaging $360 for financial assistance customers and $560 for other residential customers. So this is within about $70 and $30 respectively of the pre-pandemic period. So we're continuing to work to further assist customers, but this was a major step forward. Next slide, please. So one of the new programs that we're implementing to assist customers in need of assistance is the Customer Connections program, which is actually launching today. So Customer Connections is a targeted research effort to help us better understand our low-income customers and the hurdles they've encountered when participating in and utilizing our programs and services. For their insight and feedback, we'll provide them a $150 water and power credit. So right now, there are approximately 95,000 Easy Pay and Lifeline customers with less than $500 in water and power balances who qualify for the study. The program will run through the end of June and is expected to total $15 million. Next slide, please. So based on lessons learned with the CARES grant program, we've implemented a number of changes to address the participation challenges customers previously encountered. Outreach will be across all channels, and support will be available in all languages through the contact and service centers. And surveys can be completed both online, by mail, and also through the contact and service centers. No documentation will be needed, and customers will only need to provide their account number and zip code to be able to participate. Next slide, please. So over the past 6 months, we've implemented a number of service and program improvements. Our contact center has expanded its language support capabilities to eliminate any language-related barriers. The Easy Save, or the low-income discount program, application streamlining has led to a nearly 90% reduction in application declinations and increased monthly new enrollments by over 50%. Payment arrangement options have been increased to 3 years and 4 years for residential and for Easy Save and Lifeline customers to provide more time to manage their past bills. ITS and our remittance center has integrated with the state's Housing is Key program to facilitate utility credits. In the first week, we received $232,000 for 140 customers, and the state has over 40,000 applications currently, and we're encouraging customers to apply with them. So we've also continued to increase our outreach and customer support efforts by working with community organizations and by improving our internal efforts. Next slide, please. So we also have a number of initiatives in progress. We're working with LA Sanitation to apply for about $62 million in additional state funds to help with sewer arrears. We're also working with other city agencies to see how we can streamline programs and increase outreach. With LIHEAP, which can provide up to $4,000 in assistance, there's potential for a much larger number of customers to participate than the 19,000 who participated last year. So this is the focal point of our customer outreach and assistance efforts. Excuse me. There's been some misinformation on program qualifications, so we're working with community groups to clear this up and increase awareness. In addition, we're prepared to assist with LADWP water assistance when it launches in June of this year. Our outreach efforts are continuing to increase awareness of the various assistance programs, and will be continuing beyond the end of the collections moratorium at the end of March. We're also working with the IT, finance, and communications teams to launch Level Pay in July. This was originally scheduled for June, but resources needed to be pulled for a few weeks to address a cybersecurity threat and assist with the application of the state relief funds. We've added organizational readiness resources to assist with the remaining tasks, see if we can make up some time. We're also currently sharing the program design parameters with some community-based organizations to get their feedback, and we're also getting customer feedback through our research panels. We'll continue to monitor and refine the program after its launch. Next slide. As we're implementing these improved services and new programs, we've also heavily focused on re-engaging with our customers. The benefit of these programs and improvements is heavily dependent on re-engaging with our customers. Through the pandemic period, payment arrangements decreased by 65%, and LIHEAP referrals dropped to 30%. However, we did see LIHEAP requests swing back up last year, and along with the increase in Easy Save participation, we are starting to turn the trend. With the new programs and services and with the partnerships and the outreach efforts, we're looking to sustain this new trend and be able to further support our customers. So that's the completion of the update I had today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions from board members or others? All right. Well, terrific. Thank you. This has been a very informative presentation. I guess, George, I do have some questions. And the first is related to the pending, well, it relates to the pending lifting of the moratorium on shutoffs, which is the end of the quarter, so that would be March. So while we have done a great deal of work as it relates to debt reduction, I'm going to want to understand what we're looking at from a customer risk perspective if we were to resume customer notification and potential customer shutoffs after March. I'm very interested in what that ramp-up process would look like, how many customers might be at risk for being in that funnel, and what steps we are taking, how this work has reduced, or the impact that this work, and in particular, the impact that our program that's launching today, sort of the interrelationship between that program and that group of customers and customers who might be at risk of enforcement action related to collections by the department. And I'm also going to be very interested in what our communication strategies are doing to make sure that customers are aware of options that are available to them so that they are not on the receiving end of any enforcement action related to collection. So this is really good sort of look back or snapshot of what's occurred, and it's all great news. but we do have to pivot forward so that there are no surprises about what's on the horizon as we, again, continue to emerge from the pandemic and resume operations that approximate normal, although in this case, again, from my perspective, our relationship with our customer, our support of our customer, and our collection efforts must be greatly improved. Normal was not, is not a standard to which I'm interested in returning, or past practices.
Yes, we're definitely looking to, we're putting that together right now. Definitely not looking to go back to, there is no normal. I mean, really, it's just how do we kind of approach this where we don't necessarily undo anxiety for customers, and then be able to meet, be able to proceed and be able to do it in a supportive, helpful way. So we'll definitely pull that together and be able to present it shortly.
Well, this is the end of February. And so, if you were coming back to us with this in 2 weeks or 3, or, not the next meeting, but the meeting after, that puts us toward the end of March, which means that depending on where you are, that will have implications for that. From my perspective, that will have implications for the moratorium, because we have to have a clear way of emerging or moving beyond that has taken into account all of these issues. And these are things that this board will want to understand and see a clear path forward that mitigates and does not create a cliff that our customers are falling off of. And right now, I don't know what that looks like. So just heads up.
Yes, no, understood. And I just do want to say, with the moratorium ending, starting April 1st, doesn't mean we will be starting shutoffs on April 1st. It would be but we'll walk you through that and be able to explain and kind of be able to have enough time to get your feedback.
Well, no, and I appreciate that. I'm just causing or hoping to cause you to appreciate the degree to which the board will be interested in and need to be comfortable with the plan, the pivot forward. And so as much care and planning and daylighting and transparency as we have been able to provide in terms of the current round of debt relief, we will need to be able to provide as we are moving forward and returning or putting in place the kind of practices that will support our customers as we transition away from the moratorium. Commissioner Reyes, I saw you sort of sit up. Did you have any comment?
Yeah, my comment and a question, George, is I noticed the increase in the number of referrals and enrollment, and I think I saw the map where our heat map where those are, and considering the pandemic, we have moved in areas, right, for our penetration that are not normally our target audience, so to speak. So I'm just curious where those areas are and how much of when we do our communication, are we also, is it just a generic communication piece, or are we doing some targeted communication pieces so that at least we were looking into a deeper penetration level with those customers that are affected?
No, definitely not looking at to do this on a generic method, actually. If we could go to the appendix, slide 10, please.
There you go.
So, we are, and we even have a more detailed version of this by census tract, but really we are looking at this as to where the trends have been by area and segment, and not only from a geographical perspective, but also just we're doing some further segmentation to better understand and outreach to our customers. And this is the reason for this is to be able to do targeted outreach that kind of resonates with those customers, not just a blanket type thing. So there definitely is overall kind of outreach efforts that are at the high level and kind of broad. But then we're working with different community organizations. We're trying to outreach right now to faith-based organizations for their assistance in addition. Teaming up with some other city agencies who currently have pathways to a lot of our customers and seeing how we can, increase outreach, but then also maybe potentially how to be able to facilitate and streamline some of the program participation efforts. And then also, as they're calling in to us, being able to identify some things that make it easy for our reps to also, address their immediate concern, but then, turn in and see how they can further assist them. So definitely the outreach is the key. And when we're trying to really just emphasize that re-engagement. And to do that, we do need to be, segmented, targeted with this. So definitely.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you. I'd like to, we're going to defer the power presentation to a future board meeting. Like to have a full commission for that presentation, so that will move. Also, at this time, I'd like to go back and look at address a couple of items. I did not specifically call for the introduction of motions. I was not aware of any at the time, but if there are, please, if there are, we would entertain that at this time. Seeing none, we will move on. And then we'll move to now filed items. Are there any questions or comments on any of the filed items?
At one point, Marty, if we could get an update on the rates and equity metrics and how they align with equity strategies. Are they working in consultation with the team that we have right now on equity strategies, and how does that look like? Because we had a lot of investment and efforts in the revising some of the equity metrics, as you may know, about a year and a half ago.
We can do that. I mean, I think important to make sure that the effort that's going on with the LA 100 equity metrics work and this are lined up correctly. So we'll do that and make any adjustments we need to that you see fit.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move to item K, which is recommendation for approval of the minutes. And with respect to item K, Commissioner Lair, you were not present at this meeting, so not eligible to vote on this item.
Okay.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes from January 25th, 2022?
So moved.
I will second if you will call the roll.
Board President McCLAIN-HILL,
Aye.
Vice President Reyes,
Aye.
Commissioner BARAD Hopkins,
Aye.
REYES.
Terrific. We will now go down to item L2. Commissioner BARAD Hopkins had questions for the ratepayer advocate. Would you like a presentation, Commissioner, on item L2, or do you simply want to ask your question?
I would just like to ask the question, please.
Certainly. Go ahead.
I wondered if Fred could explain the item for approval, because $360 million is a large chunk of money. and I would like him to explain that.
The capital budget for power at DWP for this fiscal year is $1.3 billion, and it was anticipated that that would be financed by, actually, Steve, could you go to a couple slides in? There's a small table that shows capital expenditure. There it is. Total capital expenditure is $1.3 billion, and it was anticipated external debt financing would be, external debt was $1.3 billion, or 1.298, and total capital was 1.81. And overall capital coverage was expected to be for this year 66.3%. The question is, and I don't have the information, Ann may have it available, as to what the expected year-end capital expenditure is likely to be at this point, because there are a lot of things that might hold up capital expenditure in this environment. And we are having potentially large commitments in the development or redevelopment of the IPP project.
Good morning, Commissioner Ann Santilli. We are underrunning our capital budgets if you look at our November activity report. However, this is a planned budget, planned bond measure, and to the extent we don't spend it on investments for this fiscal year, the money will roll over to next fiscal year, and with rising inflation, we're likely to have a better bond offering if we issue the bonds now than we wait till fiscal year 22-23. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I just, I believe it does. I just wondered where the, whether this is a good use of our money, because it's so much. Fred, what are you thinking about this?
And do you know offhand what portion of this is the ramp up for IPP?
I believe IPP will be issuing their own debt.
Oh, okay.
But this is to support, like you said, the $1.8 billion in capital for this fiscal year, and then next year there will be that much or more capital that we will be planning for.
Okay.
And our prior year's capital spending was at this level or higher, or at least close to that.
Right.
Okay, thank you very much. This is helpful. Thank you, Ann and Fred.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any other questions on L2? Terrific. Is there a motion to move this forward?
I moved that this L2, right?
Yes.
Item be approved.
I will second.
Board President McCLAIN-HILL,
Aye.
Vice President Reyes,
Aye.
Commissioner BARAD Hopkins,
Aye.
Commissioner LEHRER,
Aye.
4 ayes.
Terrific. I am going to recuse myself from the meeting and therefore exit from open session altogether so that item L3 can be taken up. We'll be turning the gavel over to our Vice President. In addition, we will be moving into closed session following item L3. It is noon. Does 12:30 for closed session beginning work for folks, or would you like to start sooner? And I'm looking primarily at the commissioners.
That works.
Okay, so we'll
That works for me.
resume. Terrific. We'll resume the meeting in closed session at 12:30, and Mr. Bravich will take us out in the appropriate manner. I will be signing off, and thank you all for today.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, can you put up item L3 on screen?
It's, did you want, it's the reso? Did you want the actual reso?
No, what the item is called is the,
Oh.
okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, okay. Sorry about that. It is, resolution authorizing travel of Board President Cynthia McCLAIN-HILL to Albuquerque, New Mexico from February 22nd to the 24th, 2022, representing the Department and Board of Water and Power Commissioners.
I think this was also explained on the report this morning. Any discussion? We have the motion before us. Any discussion or any questions from our commissioners? Hearing none, we can call for a vote. Madam Secretary?
Is there a motion and a second? Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second. Can you call the roll, please?
Vice President Reyes,
Aye.
Commissioner BARAD Hopkins,
Aye.
Commissioner LEHRER.
Aye.
Motion
Three ayes.
passes. Thank you. So I'll turn it over to Joe to set us for adjournment for this open session, and we'll move to closed session.
At this time, the board shall recess, and then we will reconvene in closed session at 12:30 to address the items on item M of the agenda. And in accordance with California Government Code Section 54957.1, we will report any final and reportable actions taken therein. At this time, we are in recess until 12:30. Thank you.
Thank you. Please remain silent while the microphones are turned off.